Hello, welcome to another battleship inspection in World of Warships. We're looking at yet another OG. It's the GK. Why would you play the GK in 2024? You probably wouldn't. Why would you get the GK now that it's available for coal? You definitely would not do that either. That would be pretty fucking insane. What is the GK? Well, 95% of games, you're a shitty Montana. Uh, you've got this hull with really nice platings on it, but a bigger superstructure. You're kind of just easier to hit in general. You don't have Montana's improved heal. So, how do you find game impact? Now, we're not even really considering building for secondaries on the GK. Um, they're not even very good, really. So, how do you find game impact in the GK? Well, that is by embracing your role as the damage pay piggy for the entire enemy team. You've got to embrace the suck. We are not trying to mitigate damage in the GK. No, we are not trying to do that. What are we trying to do? We are trying to receive the damage deliberately. So, we are not taking concealment. We are instead taking the silly, goofy consumables duration upgrade in slot 5 instead of concealment. And if you see in the bottom left, you will see that we basically have almost a Montana heal. Also, because of the spec, we have almost a Montana damage control model. So, what is the idea behind this ridiculous build, this ridiculous gameplay? Well, being a target. Because here's the problem. Montana probably would have one-shot that Hindenburg. Okay, we kill him in 2, but Montana probably would have one-shot him. Your AP specifically is very inconsistent because of the dispersion. You basically have 0.1 worse Sigma than Montana, and then because you can't use American accuracy module, you kind of have like 4%-ish worse base dispersion. So this kind of lands you into the realm of, instead of maybe hitting 7 or 8 shells on average, you probably hit 4 or 5, typically speaking. There you see 5 on a broadside angling Montana. So, okay. I need everybody to sit down, and I need everyone to strap on their anti-cringe headphones. You spam HE. This is what you do in the GK. You spam HE. Because the problem is that you do not have the accuracy, even though you have the shell count, you do not have the accuracy in the GK to hit superstructure. You see there, we hit 3 shells, 1 on his ass. How much damage would that have given me with AP? Basically 0. Basically 0 damage. So, it is cringe as fuck, undeniably, but the most consistent way to impact the game while you draw attention to yourself, while you take this damage, is to mostly spam HE at people. And there you see there, 3 hits for another fire. That would have been, maybe, if we were lucky, 10,000 damage. Instead, because we got 3 HE pens and a fire, that's about a 20k damage hit, right? That's the idea here. I'm trying to hold this shot. I was hoping the Cassar would overextend. There you go. Now he's on a double fire, right? So those 2 shots on the Montana have given me the equivalent of like a 30,000 AP volley. Now, obviously, he could heal 100% of that fire damage back, right? We're not debating that. But we have really limited how aggressive he would maybe want to play, right? Here, I didn't notice this guy's speed boost was on, and that's why we're under lead. That probably would have been a decent hit if he didn't have speed boost up. But this is what you do in the GK. You shoot a lot of HE. And this is different from the Preußen, because the Preußen does not have the shell count to spam HE. GK's fire chance is very okay, 38% fire chance. The alpha on the HE is really, and the pen, also the pen, 102 millimeters. You sit at all like the ultralight cruisers like Minotaur and such, but you don't really have any damage with the HE. And to be fair, you don't really have any damage with the AP. It does 800 less per hit than Montana AP. So not only is your full alpha strike like the equivalent of 1 less gun on the Montana, given that you don't hit nearly the same amount of shells, It's also a lot worse. Like, this is a dead Des Moines. I mean, every now and then you might get trolled, maybe, but that's a dead Des Moines to Montana. 90% of the time, he would be dead, right? So you don't have the consistency on the guns that Montana has, and you don't have the damage duration through fires and floodings that Montana has with the improved heals. So this is the point. This is the playstyle. This is my GK patented playstyle. You park broadside enough, close enough to enemy ships that they cannot fucking help themselves. Battleship players see big broadside dumb German GK battleship. They go ooga booga damage, 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 and then they shoot you for 15k instead of annihilating your cruiser or getting a lucky sit on your battleship, because you're basically impossible to citadel unless you're going through weird maneuvers. Some really long range floaty battleship AP kind of weird shit can happen. Generally speaking, you can't really take a citadel. Uh, the secondaries are pure cope on the GK. The Hydro is almost exclusively pure cope as well. If you are close enough to people to use the Hydro against destroyers to actually spot them, there is a very low percentage chance that you are going to be living. That was just a horrible shot. I don't know. You see how I dragged my aim down on the minimap? Like, Jesus. Okay. GK is so inaccurate. We almost hit a shell though. Pretty cool. So this is the idea. The idea is tanking by damage received. Damage received tanking. It's a very different, it's a very admittedly awkward, cringe, not super interesting, fun playstyle, but it undeniably gives your team some damage, some game impact. It undeniably does. We're going to see like the end of this game. Both replays actually, as always, we're looking at some two back-to-back games. Uh, Basically, in my mind, what I'm aiming for in the GK is if I haven't received a minimum of 150,000 damage, I haven't really done my job. This is going to kind of harken back to like what I've said about ships like Khabarovsk, Lucian. They don't they don't really have the ability to farm. Like GK does not farm damage well enough to justify playing over Montana. So, how do you have the same game impact as Montana? If you're not a consistent broadside smasher, you don't have the accuracy to DPM. Montana is even a better HE spammer than you, right? So, how do you find game impact in a ship that doesn't really consistently pump out damage? Um, well, you receive damage. That's really it. That's the playstyle. That's the Gigabrain strat in the GK. Because Battleship players cannot help themselves. They might have a Des Moines at a 45-degree angle at 15 kilometers with a 50-50 chance of dev striking it. But if your GK is flat broadside to them at 18 kilometers, 90% of Battleship monkeys will shoot you because they're going to guarantee the big funny damage number on the middle of their screen, right? That is the idea. You are using the psychology of the Battleship player base against it. That is the idea. So we don't care about angling because angling doesn't really even work in the GK. The superstructure is so big, the gun angles are so shit. Uh, Again, we're spamming HE. Schlieffen has limited DCPs. Could we have maybe hit 10k on him with that if that was an AP salvo? We maybe could, right? This salvo here probably should be AP, right? Definitely should be AP on this salvo. But in general, I would say at least half of my salvos in the GK in a typical game like this are just sadly, they're going to be HE. It's more consistent because you can't cluster shells in superstructures. That is the problem. Montana at 15 kilometers against a GK is probably going to stack 7 or 8 shells on the superstructure for a good 15 to 20k. GK is going to stack maybe 4 or 5, right? That's kind of the basic idea here. And we can hit the Hydro. You see also with this build, we have a turbo cringe Hydro duration of basically 3 minutes. And now we're going to turn out again, right? We're going to just let this Des Moines farm me. This is fine. We're going to let the Des Moines farm me. And you're about to see a very, we talked about how Montana has the accuracy to even get some good hits on bow-in cruisers. This is a pure RNG rule in something like the GK. It's just so RNG based, even at this fairly close range. That what are we at? 13 kilometers. Yeah, we just shot the Des Moines for 0 damage, right? And we're gonna kite away from him because, you know, we don't want to keep pushing into him and really the Cassard. So we're just going to keep spamming at this guy, and we're just trying to get a good RNG roll. We're just trying to get a nice lucky hit on him. Wow, one pen for 4,200 damage, right? Battleships, they have no ability to kill cruisers unless they overmatch them, right? Oh man, it's so frustrating. But here's the thing. I'm in a big fat dumb GK with a giant superstructure. How does this guy kill me? I have a 25-second damage control. And then that. And then there's that, right? And then there's that. It's just like, what is the Des Moines player doing wrong? Nothing. He's not doing anything wrong. I'm in an inaccurate ship, and, you know, still, probably every 2 or 3 salvos, you get a random citadel through the bow. And I basically shut down his ability to continue farming me because now if I get lucky one more time back to back, I will kill him, right? So, you know, we're just going to keep kiting away. Our Holland killed the Destroyer, which was like an enormous, enormous trade. Also, not that easy. A low HP Cassard effectively has like double its listed HP because French saturation, right? So, we're running away. We're already almost at 2 million potential. And this is, again, this is why you spam HE. Like, look at where I'm hitting this guy, right? Those aren't even going to be pens with AP. This is what I'm getting at. You don't have great fire starting. You don't have good HE alpha. But shooting something like a bow in Montana at 18 kilometers, like the only way to get any damage off of this guy consistently is to AP HE spam him. I mean, look where these shells are hitting. Maybe we could have gotten a single AP pen. Maybe. If we were quite lucky. Maybe. That Des Moines was playing fast and loose. Another thing with GK though that it does have going for it over Montana, you could maybe make the argument is it has higher DPM. Are battleships DPM ships? You tell me. I don't think they are, especially without overmatch. This is another reason why spamming HE is unfortunately and very cringely the kind of the go-to play because it's kind of the best way to make use of the improved reload. Aside from spamming AP, it's just like there's no reason to spam AP. Now this guy's kind of angled, right? Um, that probably would have been, you know, 10k with AP instead of 5k, but it's just like not worth it. Unless people are flat broadside, like 50 better degrees in this thing, the AP is so inconsistent. Doesn't have great pen. The dispersion is very mediocre. I mean, I will say though that the thing is not like the ridiculous shotgun that this player base like on Reddit pretends that it is, right? It's noticeably less accurate than Montana, um, but it's not like you never hit a shell kind of a thing, right? Cruiser players go flat broadside you at 15 kilometers. You're still probably taking a solid half of their HP kind of a thing. Um, so we are bringing this game back and like this guy's dead 9 out of 10 times making this play. Like I don't know what he's doing. He's just hoping I get bad RNG, but like realistically speaking, he would need an incredible amount of luck to live that, right? We're at 2.3 million potential. We're at 200,000 damage, um, and we're gonna look at the damage dealt after this game. But I think you're gonna be surprised like how much of it was basically due to fires, especially on salvos that wouldn't have gotten me good damage, right? So like here, this Montana is close enough and broadside enough that the AP makes sense, right? I probably wouldn't spam HE at this angle, but like even now when he's angling in like 30, 40 degree, like 40, 35 degrees, like the HE is just going to give you more consistent game impact because even if we don't get the like that would have been 0 damage with AP, right? We like shotgunned, I underled, we hit his upper plating with one, and then his main belt with two. Like we just weren't going to get any damage. Here we see the absolute state of the submarine player base. There is a single battleship alive without hydro, and our sub is in the bottom of the fucking ocean. It's just absolutely incredible gameplay. Honestly, as a player base, we should pretty much all rejoice that the average sub player is this retarded because can you imagine having to fight against sub players with half a brain? It would be pure cancer. Um, there you go, 9K HE. got a fire. Yeah, probably would have done 10 to 12k with the AP into his superstructure. But again, the value of griefing damage controls, like, this is a guy who wants to continuously single damage control use, right? So, like, while I am only getting 9,000 damage instead of maybe 10 or 12 if I like use the copium AP ammo, now my Yodo can start fires, right? Now my sub, because these guys are like intent on trying to lose this game. Um, I was on incredibly low HP. Imagine if I had died there. This would be really sketchy all of a sudden, right? So now that I've burned his damage control, the sub is going to get permafloods, right? Like, this is the concept, right? This is and look at this. The sub has permafloods. So yes, I have cucked my own personal funny damage number by getting 9k in a fire instead of 12k with AP. So I've missed out on a few thousand damage, but I've guaranteed this guy dies now because he's permaflooding, right? You're just you're not taking, I mean, yeah, you can get lucky in this thing, but like, you're not taking 50k chunks out of battleships with the AP. You're not chunking superstructures for 20k consistently, right? Like, that's the concept. You are giving your team game impact by just getting hit. That's it. You're gonna involuntarily put your ship in a situation where you can spam HE, use AP on broadsides if you see them, and that's kind of the way to get battle impact, right? Sub is top of the team because sub, we love it, we love it, we love it. Detailed report, we got 32k from fires, right? HE accounted for, like, it was basically half and half, but the important thing is the griefing the damage control, and it's just like, if you hit 5 or 6 shells in the GK, you're pretty much guaranteed a fire, and even if the fire doesn't tick for you, you're gonna grief the DCP. Like, that's the idea. I mean, you see the shells fired for the hits. Like, this is what I'm talking about, right? We're hitting like a bit more than a third of our shells per salvo. Montana, leaving aside blind firing, gets more like 40-45% shell hits, typically speaking. Um, so, like, if you're shotgunning people across the map with AP for like a single penetration, there's no reason to cope into 4,200 AP damage when you can get a fire, right? Like, that's the idea. It's not a very fun and engaging way, but this is the damage received, right? This is the game impact. The potential's like not super high, right? Like, you're typically speaking in GK, aside from weird situations, not gonna like tank 5 million and live. Like, every now and then you can in something like a Kremlin. But this is the damage received, right? We gave people on the enemy team a nice big juicy damage number on us instead of our team. That's the idea. That is the idea, is you are the damage farmer for the enemy team, not for your team. Now, that was an example of your typical GK game. You don't really have any ability to push. You don't really have any ability to brawl. Let's say that's 90+% of GK games. You are forced to play the map like a shitty version of Montana, and that is why we are going with full survivability spec. That's why we're dropping the concealment. We're trying to get shot at. We're giving the team value by being shot at, by receiving damage that does maybe 15k to us, but maybe would get a Citadel on somebody else, right? That's the idea. If you are playing the GK in the same way that you would play a Montana, then you're griefing your team and yourself. That's all there is to it. It doesn't do what Montana does. It doesn't reliably punish broadsides. It doesn't reliably shit into superstructures. It doesn't even really HE spam as well. Like I said, it's kind of the only way to achieve meaningful game impact at range is lighting fires in this thing. But it doesn't even do that well. The Hydro in most games is pure cope. The lack of Citadel in most games is pure cope because just angle, right? And this is what I said in my Montana video. When I started playing this game, I didn't understand why people would play Montana over GK because I was a bad player, right? I was a bad player. I would go broadside. I would not understand how turning and drifting mechanics worked. I would raise my Citadel up out of the water. I would lose a bunch of HP in Montana. I couldn't make use of the better heals, and I would be like, man, you could just play GK. The guns aren't that much worse, and it doesn't have a Citadel, and it's got the Hydro, right? I feel like that's what happens with a lot of players, and that's why the GK attracts a lot of noobs, because the idea is I can play like an aggressive bot and not die. And the problem is, like, you die. That's the problem, is you play the GK super aggressive early game and you just die in it, like 90% of the time, right? Like this salvo, this North Carolina is showing a bit too much broadside, you know, uh, like pretty solid hit, right? There's a really good chance that's a dev strike in Montana, right? This is what I'm getting at. Like, the idea that these guns at all are close to as consistent as Montana guns, they're just not, right? I mean, the healing is not nearly as good. The DCP is not as good, right? Like, we're coping our way into this kind of survivability by intentionally dropping concealment, by taking a weird build, right? We're trying to gain value out of the GK experience. Now, uh, like I said, these are nice back-to-back games because they do highlight when the GK can be good. And this is the kind of game where the GK can be good. There are low DDs, right? Ideal, theoretically, GK's Hydro is making you decent against destroyers. No. The Hydro on GK kind of just lets you know in advance how fucked you're about to be by torpedoes. Not necessarily. This is this is ridiculous, right? This guy's gameplay is just mind-boggling. This is a dead North Carolina. Like, 9 out of 10 times that's a dead North Carolina. In Montana, we get 3 shells, we get 1 Citadel for like 16k, right? So we can't consistently help our team because in Montana, I would probably be 2 for 2. I would probably have 2 kills, 80,000 damage in Montana, taking this exact same position, right? But because we have the Hydro that never ends, we can kind of bot the fuck out. Judiciously, we can kind of bot the fuck out. That's also probably a kill in Montana. We hit 2 shells for 2 Citadels. Very cool. Um, and this is what I mean. Like, the guns are not... It's not that the guns are twice as bad as Montana. It's dispersion, shell grouping. A lot of the troll salvos happen on the margins, right? This is the right way to think of it. Is like, it's not that GK has way worse dispersion or way worse Sigma. Because it doesn't. It only has, the full-size dispersion ellipse is probably only 6-7% bigger than Montana with, I believe, 0.1 worse Sigma. The problem is when you're shooting at a target at a range where a Montana lands every shell, no questions asked, all of a sudden the GK shells go outside the target, right? Like that's the problem. We talked about that in the Wisconsin video about how, like, even though it has fewer shells, Wisconsin actually tends to hit like the same, if not more, than Montana, because at certain ranges, all of a sudden, instead of every shell on the dispersion ellipse falling within the size of the hull you're shooting at, there is like 20% daylight around the edges, and now you get like a bunch of troll salvos, right? So here is a really good example of why I say premium DCP is one of the best mods in the game. We can just basically instantly DCP. Even if this guy got another rack of torps off, the damage control would still be up, right? And we're able to full turnout in this gap. Now you're going to see like how bad GK's maneuverability really is. Like, I think I end up getting beached here again. Yeah, I don't think I can make this turn. I'm pretty sure that the GK cannot, in fact, make this turn. But because I have the Hydron and the sub got Hydroed, he now has to fuck off. So that is one thing the GK has going for it, is in these sub lobbies, right? In these sub lobbies, it is undeniably very nice that submarines cannot surface even at periscope depth within 6 kilometers of you when the Hydra is on. That is an undeniable asset that the GK has. Now, overall, is it better against subs because of that? I don't really think so. I just think it's a niche situation that's on display here, where the sub wants to play aggressively, but because my Hydro covers like the whole cap, he now has to go fuck off, right? So, we're about 6.5 minutes in this game. We only have 70,000 damage, but we're in a good position, right? We're actually in a pretty good position. The North Carolina is still on the rock. Donskoy and Victoria are kiting. What I don't want to do is push around here, because the problem is my Zetan's stuck. I mean, he's just in a horrific situation. He's just getting full sent at by the whole enemy team, right? I have Vermont's on the one line. So these ships here, there's nothing to crossfire them. So the safe, and my GK, right? classic misunderstanding in battleships. Um, if I were to make the safe play, if you look at the minimap and curl out around here and team up with my team, it's very safe, right? I don't risk the Schlieffen rushing me. I don't risk the sub still being here. But then I give up any crossfire. And how long is this North Carolina going to be sitting here, right? It's going to be sitting here like basically the whole game, right? Here we see again. It's probably yet another kill in Montana. Like this guy is living so long, and this is like back to what I complained about in Montana video about like battleship players complain about cruisers getting away with murder. Like this is a fucking North Carolina, my brother. I mean, yeah, GK's got a bit more inconsistent guns, but like that guy would have died like 50-50 first salvo. We shot the whole game. He would have died. 100% he's dead on second salvo. But this is why I'm reversing in here, because I'm the only crossfire, right? Or Amalfi's just trying to run away and live. But all of a sudden, this Donskoy's in a really bad spot, and I am almost positive he did not expect me to be here. Because I was last spotted deeper on these islands, and he probably just never in a million years would have assumed that a fucking GK would just reverse into the cap to crossfire him, right? Joke's on him. I'm a bot, right? Bot gameplay can be highly effective. So we're still down HP. We're still down ships. There's no way I can like really hold this cap, mainly just because of the Jutland. If it was just the Schlieffen and the GK, I would probably be tempted to fight for it a bit, but the Jutland being back there somewhere is a big problem, because as soon as Schlieffen or GK gets spotting on me, then obviously the Jutland could just like pop a smoke. He's got fairly decent DPM, fairly decent fire starting, right? He contributes like a ton of added damage into me that I am not really like prepared to deal with. And I think this was a mistake, firing that salvo. I think I should have waited. I should have known that this Schlieffen would be a fucking idiot, right? I should have assumed that he would be stupid and do this, because he was in the cap, right? You saw the cap start getting contested, and I would have had a very good chance of, if not killing him, getting him so low with a 12-gun volley that he would have died sooner this game. So, do you think that was like a bit of ADHD greed? Like, ooh, broad, dude. Remember what I said in the last replay? Battleship monkeys? Am I holding up my hand? Am I holding up my hand right now? Battleship monkeys see broadside German battleship and they go, ooga booga damage! And they just can't help themselves? Yeah, I couldn't help myself. Look at that. I trolled myself with my own strategy! Right? It's fucking crazy. If I had held that shot, the Schlieffen might be dead, right? Yeah, he probably lives, but he's probably on more like 5 to 20k HP instead of 30 something, right? That's the basic idea. This game is going worse and worse for us. Now we're down fucking 4 to 7, right? We're double capped, so like it's basically unlosable. We just have to get kills, right? We just have to get kills, and this is why like not killing that Schlieffen or trying to kill him, getting trolled by my own fucking strategy. Had a very high potential to bite me in the ass this game, because like the Schlieffen is one shot basically, or if he would be one shot is what I mean to say, right? So the sub is running. Now the question is, what do we do here? I'm backing up my Vermont, so I'm trying to take the damage for him, is kind of the idea. And real big kudos. Jutland ended up being basically our MVP by a country mile. I just literally have no idea what the play here is. I have no idea. Even GK at this range is like, it's still going to take most of your boat. But like, look at this. Look at that hit. Double Citadel. So that's what I mean. If I had killed him earlier, if I hadn't griefed myself by being a battleship monkey and shooting at the GK, he would be alive. And instead, he's going to like, yeah, he barely lives. He's probably like 3,000-4,000 HP. That's kind of funny. I didn't even notice that playing this. Getting the Lucian's heal because of that rune is undeniably an interesting mechanic. Happening an extra 3,000 HP for no reason. But like, this is classic winning harder by the enemy team, right? Like, this is classic winning harder shit. I think I've gotten something like 100,000+ damage in the last 2 minutes on people just going flat broadside to me for no reason. And This is the strength that the GK still has. And I would argue really even over Preußen aside from against 30 millimeter cruisers, right? Because Preußen has the overmatch, the 30 overmatch. So against like Des Moines and things like that, it's definitely better than the GK, even at very close range. But GK, especially when you take a reload mod, you have some adrenaline rush kicking in, right? Like we are on a 22-second reload on, yeah, not very accurate, but we're on a 22-second reload on 12 406 guns, right? Like now, another reason Montana's better is Montana can take Halsey, and Halsey is god tier ridiculous on Montana, and you can't get the fucking, you can't get, Confederate on Luchins, unfortunately. Um, so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to keep pushing the Schlieffen, because my Takahashi's there, the Schlieffen's on like no HP, right? Um, so I don't want to let him sit here and tort my Vermont. So the idea is if I keep pushing him, because at least I have Hydro, right? If I keep pushing him, then maybe I can get some game impact out of that. Also, Vermont doesn't have any kind of like icebreaker. GK actually has a very sizable icebreaker. You just have the really upper part of the bow that's overmatchable by this Yamato. So I want to yet again. What is our role? Our role is receiving damage that does maybe 15, 20k to us, but could nuke a teammate, right? Like to me, that's the role of the GK. Um, so this rune is going in for probably a torp rush, right? So there's kind of like exactly one play to make here, which is I have to just hope we break his torps. He doesn't have them loaded on his left side, doesn't have time to shoot them, something like that, because like he basically kills my Vermont for free, unfortunately. Um, and now there's kind of two things I could do here. The Yamato's purely bow in, so the only way I get meaningful damage on him is, like you see there, he gets one hit in the upper bow, then he breaks a gun, but he's not really doing that much damage to me, right? Like, those salvos on something with a giant nose like Vermont would easily be like a 20k plus salvo. Um, so what I'm doing is I'm free looking, because uh, as of right now, I'm never going to kill the Yamato, right? Like, 1v1, he's way too healthy. He's not showing cheek or anything, right? The best I could really hope for is getting a fire, like penning his bow for like maybe 6k, getting a fire, right? So that's why I'm keeping my guns over here, because I'm gonna just run at him, and then by running at him, I make sure he kind of panics and shoots me, because like realistically, he probably shouldn't be shooting me, because there's probably no world he can actually kill me in this situation. What he should be doing is blowing my cruiser out of the fucking water, but he's panicking. And this is, I've said this many, many, many times, how hard people in this game panic. So we kept the guns on the Schlieffen, and then now, I don't have a Citadel. So he's dead. He's got a Citadel. I don't have a Citadel, right? GK's very good in a drive-by for that reason. And you notice his front guns weren't even pre-turned, so I mean I'm gonna die here, right? But because he got the fucking secondary fire, there's Schlieffen, who tried to win harder along with his whole team, asking how did we lose? Um, well, they lost because they tried to win harder, and that's what I mean by how hard people panic. Like logically speaking, uh, that Yamato should know he's not going to, like, 25,000 HP. There's really no universe he can two-shot me through the bow on a GK. So logically, he should be shooting another ship. He could have like easily killed the Takahashi for free, right? Because I was really never gonna do more than like maybe one for one him. Um, but yeah, people panic when you shove a battleship down their mouth. Like I've said it many many times in all of these replays. People just panic when you cram your battleship into everybody's life, and the GK it is still in a slugfest at close range. It is undeniably still one of the better ships. Assuming you can start the fight at high HP. Yes, the superstructure is a gigantic, gigantic liability. Yes, 100% the superstructure is a giant problem. But damage saturation is a thing. And if you get shot at by like a Montana in your GK superstructure, yeah, you can 100% get cooked for like 20 to 25k. It definitely happens. It sucks. But that next salvo is not going to do that kind of damage, right? It's going to do more like 15k. Still sucks. Still a giant weakness of the ship. We're not trying to sugarcoat this, right? Like, it's still a giant problem. The way AP works in this game is just like really bizarre because basically shells fuse when they ricochet. So like when you hit deck and then skip into superstructure on GK, like you would expect all over pens because how are the shells arming right on the like 20 something millimeter superstructure? But unfortunately, just the way the AP shells in this game work, they just like fuse on nonsense very consistently, right? So the superstructure is a giant weakness. But pushing perfectly nose in, especially in that was a kind of a niche situation. But against the Yamato, because the overmatchable part of the bow, we'll look at that in Armor Viewer, is so small. Compared to like almost anything, it is definitely an asset GK has. It's fairly resistant to 460 plus millimeter guns. Definitely more so than Montana, I would argue. Um, but this is like the unicorn moment, right? Like these are the unicorn moments you live for in GK. I don't really play the ship anymore. Like every now and then, I probably play like 1 or 2 games every couple of months in it. Used to be my most played ship. It used to be the only battleship I played. Really, it was. Like I've said many times, when I was a terrible player, I tried GK. I thought it was pretty decent as a bad player because you don't randomly blow up in GK, right? Like, uh, so and then I was like, okay, let's try Montana. Everyone says it's like still the best battleship for newer players. Try Montana, and like because I was bad at angling, Montana does have the bug Citadel also, where like you randomly just get Citadeled straight through the bow by ships that don't overmatch you. That definitely still happens, right? Um, as a bad player without torpedo awareness, the Hydro helps on GK. And I was like, I don't see the appeal. I don't see the appeal of Montana over GK. And I mean, obviously, going back to these ships as like a competent player, it's just night and day, polar opposite, right? Um, like this North Carolina man, I mean, that's just a free kill in Montana, right? I mean, honestly, a bunch of these kills, and that's the trade-off. Like the question that I have is, and again though, what was the last game? Like 200 something K damage received, and now we're at 194, right? This is the game where the game impact is coming from, most of it. But that's the trade-off. Is this was a unicorn situation? A ton of islands you get to play in and around. The Hydra's actually useful. The lack of a citadel, the big icebreaker, all of these random GK things are coming in clutch for us. But despite all of that, like if I was in Montana, wouldn't I have just blown the North Carolina up 3 salvos sooner? Wouldn't I have just blown the Bayard up instant? Wouldn't I have just in the same situation blown the Schlieffen up instant with a front gun salvo? Wouldn't I have blown the Donskoy up earlier with better dispersion? Wouldn't I have probably had a good chance to one-shot the Rune with better dispersion? I definitely would have almost one-shot the Jutland the first salvo, but then I'm not going to Hydra the sub, right? Like, and this is the problem is the times where GK is good. Like, I would say all things considered, Montana would maybe get a little more damage early game, but Montana's not capable of carrying this game when you're down 4v7 on ships and you have to push into a Schlieffen, Rune, Yamato, GK Crossfire. I don't think the Montana is capable of that, obviously. And even not building for the secondaries, like let's look at the detailed report. Like even not building for secondaries, and this is the thing. Once you get at super close range, like there's not really any value to improve secondary accuracy. Like improved secondary accuracy matters against like destroyers, longer range targets, but like nut hair range where you're just shoving into people's mouths, it's not really getting you much, right? But yeah, I mean, 1 in 10 games the GK is better than Montana. 9 in 10 games the Montana is better than GK. That's kind of how I look at it. Okay, now we're gonna get into the silly, goofy build that I'm running on the GK, and it looks weird because it is weird. Um, I still think this is just like objectively correct. Like you have a 15-second base DCP, so even with zero build, you're gaining an extra 6 seconds. So you're getting over a 20-second damage control, just base bog standard stock. Um, the Hydro is just like, why not? Um, we're not running into secondaries at all, so we're taking aiming systems. Um, Prop mod probably overall more useful. This is into because we're taking such big hits with AP deliberately, right? Again, it's a weird fucking way to play battleships. We're deliberately getting shot, and so then when we burn, we don't want to burn out, right? So we're taking a little bit of that. The pure cope ship consumables, one extra 20 seconds of hydro, extra 1500 HP healing, right? Pure cringe, undeniably. Listen, range mod GK is like not a meme. Range mod GK, if you are not trying to buy into my get shot deliberately, try to receive 200,000 damage, right? That's the goal. Receive 200k damage. You're not sold by this. Fair. It's kind of stupid. It works. It's kind of, in my opinion, like one of the only ways GK really gives game impact is, like you saw, how it works against me in the second replay. Broadside GK, they cannot help themselves. Battleship, monkey brain, see broadside battleship. Battleship, monkey brain, shoot broadside battleship. Drool from mouth over damage, right? That's how it works. So we're just building into DPM because that's the thing. We're just slinging again, especially early game, a lot of HE. Building into reload. Um, and then there's a debate on what kind of guns you take. Uh, so basically, the way that it works is if you take range mod, you take 420s. If you take reload mod, you take 406s. Why? Because the only advantage the 420s actually have, yes, they do Montana damage per shot, but if you take 420s and reload, then you have 29 seconds. So you're just like 1 second better reload than Montana for no reason. Um, the HE, as you can see, does only 200 more damage. If the HE on this did like 1,000 more, if it had like real HE alpha, worth as fuck, I would say. But basically, the primary value the 420s have is they have improved penetration at range. So GK against something like Montana is probably going to reliably citadel it around 17-ish kilometers with the 406s, and then the 420s bump that up to like maybe about 19, right? So something like Yamato, you reliably citadel maybe 15, 16. Now it's like 16, 17. It's kind of the way to look at it. They also make the Yamato sound. They make a nice sound effect. That's probably the real reason to take them, is the funny sound. But basically, the idea with this build is we're going into a 25.5 second reload, which is pretty cool. Like you saw in that replay, you're on 40,000 HP, you got a 22-second reload. Pretty cool, undeniably, I think. Commander build, it's actually very standard tank build. Like bog standard tank build, really. So there's also a variation on this playstyle that I call the ranked GK beat build with a trademark at the end. And that is you take long range secondaries, but not manual secondary battery. Okay, and then you take close quarters combat. And the reason why you do this is you still take aiming systems, but it gives you 11-kilometer secondary range, which is like kind of the range where a ton of your fights in rank happen. And then you're building a 10% buff on the reload at all times. So on half HP, you get something like a 19-second reload on GK. That is my go-to rank build. Like unironically, that is the rank build I run on GK 100% of the time. Is I literally just drop concealment on the captain for close quarters combat, and I drop improved repair party readiness because you're never fucking 6 healing in GK in ranked. I drop that for long range secondaries, and then people are not ready for it. People are not ready for your 75,000, your 3/4 HP GK to have a 22-second reload, 21-second reload, right? Like Republic reload on 12 guns. They are not ready. So that is like an unironic, silly, but actually highly effective build. Unfortunately, the turret traverse, because on Montana you can take turret traverse for free because accuracy is in the last slot. You can't do that on GK, so you're kind of incentivized to grab Grease the Gears, because even with Grease the Gears and Reload mod, We're like at Montana turret traverse without grease the gears, right? So in a perfect world, and maybe it's even still worth it in randoms to grab AA. Then when the CV humps you, which they're very incentivized to do, your AA is shit, you're big, easy to hit, right? That gives you something out of it, but we're running grease the gears on this. And then we can look at the armor. And this is what I mean. Look at how tiny that margin of error for Yamato to hit us was. And if you noticed when he was shooting at me, I think you noticed a couple of times that like one turret hit me and then like a bunch of shells went over. And this is the GK profile when you're pushing purely nose in at close range. Now, this is the GK profile at long range. Pretty big superstructure, pretty easy to hit. But at very close range, where the shells are not arcing in at all, what is there to hit? I mean, seriously, what is there to hit on this thing at 8 kilometers when it's bow into you? Like, even with Yamato, like the smallest overmatchable nose in the game, basically, and then turrets and overpens, right? Yes, the GK armor is deceptively mediocre because the superstructure's big, right? But there's a lot of things it has going for it that people, I think, unfairly don't point out. Like, bow into that Yamato at that range. That's why you might have been like shaking your head when I said he's never going to kill me and he should know better. Because like he's never going to kill me. Like, what are the chances? Like I think he had one salvo where he hit 3 pens, and then every other salvo was like turret faces for no damage, misses for no damage, 1 pen for 4,000. Right? Another thing is you're incredibly immune to destroyer AP. I mentioned in Elbing how Elbing is one of the only ships that at closer medium range has any ability to pen any part of GK side plating. So it's a gift and a curse, right? Like you have 150 millimeter upper, a bit of 280, 380. So the minimum armor plating on the broadside is 150. Now, obviously, this is not any use against Battleship AP, but against Battleship HE, almost none of your side plating is accessible. Even this is 120, 120. So you get spammed by a Conqueror, broadside with HE, there's not a ton of real estate. There are some advantages to this, admittedly mid armor scheme. Um, Cruiser AP at medium and long range, not that bad. Just a bit of angling, 150 at a 45, 50 degree angle. This is giving you effectively 200 plus millimeters of armor. You're fairly resistant to cruiser AP, undeniably. Then, unfortunately, you're also, again, I want you to look at how much of the ship is covered in 50. If cruisers don't have 50 mil pen, they just have this. There's barely any nose and ass to pen. Like, I hate that the discussion about GK armor just ends and stops with the side plating arms everything and the superstructure's big. Yes, undeniably, those are weaknesses. But like, bananas tanky, uniquely tanky against 460s, uniquely tanky against Yamato, Satsuma, Incomp, Shikishima. Um, Worth getting for Cole? 100% not. I just think Pricing is a better ship overall, really. The AP is higher pen. You have overmatch, better reload, better firing angles on the same hull. I just think Pricing is a better ship overall. If it can't really HE spam like GK, so I guess if you like are a Conqueror main who takes too many Citadels, you can spam in the GK. I don't know, man. We're trying to cope it. Not a great ship. Like I said, 90% of the time, Montana's just better, more consistent, tankier even, more survivable, better damage output, more consistent guns. And then we have games like that second replay where the GK can still get it done. That'll do it. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next one.